Hey everyone, in this video, I want to do something a little bit different. One of the things that keeps coming up in a lot of the conversations that I've had with many of you, some of the user groups that I've been at, some of the other community organized meetings and conversations that I've been a part of, uh, people are asking about the other ITSM platforms that are out there that people like their own companies or just everybody in general are moving to. Because quite frankly, everybody is in the same position right now, right? A few months ago, Avanti announced that Cherwell was end of life, and we have until the end of 2026 to figure out what we're going to move to. Um, Obviously, Avanti's own product is a prime contender. There are ways to transition. Avanti's making it as easy as possible to transition from Cherwell to Avanti, um, basically oriented around licensing, which is pretty cool. You can talk to your Avanti folks about that. They have plenty of information on that. Um, but I wanted to talk a little bit about the situation, or the context that Cortex sits in, and how it relates to that whole conversation, um, and give kind of my list that I've collected of all the different ITSM platforms that people have mentioned. I'm not going to go in depth into each one of them because we'd be here for at least 3 hours. Um, but I want to touch on a few, mention some that have come up in multiple conversations, some that I've honestly never heard of. Someone mentioned them, they went on the list. I did uh, at least search them on Google to verify that they are a legitimate company, they are a legitimate platform, and at least they claim to be an ITSM tool. So, um, but before we get into that, let's talk just a little bit about Cortex. So, of course, there's the Cortex Users Group every Tuesday, 10 a.m. Pacific. I host the Cortex Users Group. It's an opportunity for anyone who's using Cortex, thinking about using Cortex. Um, I'll even say thought about using Cortex and decided not to use it. You are still welcome. Um, this is absolutely designed to promote community, um, and both around Cortex and around kind of the future of Cherwell. So if you want to talk about the contents of this video, if you want to ask other people what they're moving to, or what their thoughts and feelings are on some of the tools that they've maybe tried out or talked to representatives from, um, uh, feel free to come and talk about that. There's information in the description below uh, where you can request an invite to the Cortex Users Group. So with that, let's dive into my list. This is in no particular order, though there are a few that I want to mention right off the bat. But this is a list of a bunch of ITSM platforms, and I'll probably say maybe like a sentence or two about each one based on my experience, if I have any about it. Maybe in future videos, I'll dive into some of the more well-known ones and some of the more popular ones that people are looking at, and talk about kind of the transition from Cherwell to those tools and some of the things from an integration perspective and from a business automation perspective. The things that I do on a regular basis and kind of the experience that I have. I might dive into some specific ones, and probably not all of the ones on this list, because this list keeps growing. Every time I have a conversation with someone, a new name gets added to the list. So with that, we're 4 minutes in, and I still haven't mentioned any name, and we've got a lot to get through. So I want to start right off the bat and talk about kind of the main spectrum that I think most people are kind of thinking about. So if you think right in the middle, you have Cherwell and to a certain extent Avanti. There are a lot of similarities between Cherwell and Avanti. Avanti, you can create a whole bunch of business objects. You can create automations, workflows, I think they might call them. Um, and you have a lot of the same functionality that you had in Cherwell, but obviously, like any of the other names on this list, you have to rebuild it from scratch. That none of these names provide an easy button where you say import entire Cherwell um, system platform, and poof, it magically does it in the new system. Unfortunately, that's actually part of the reason that things like Cortex exist. At least from your data side, right? You don't have to worry so much about the export and the import into a new system. You just you get a copy of your Cherwell data. You don't have to export anything. It is literally a copy of your Cherwell database. You stand it up on SQL Server, you run Cortex, and you're done. That's it. It couldn't be simpler. Um, I guess slightly simpler, but in most cases, it couldn't be simpler. So anyway, right in the middle, if we say we have Cherwell and Avanti, and that's kind of the the balancing point between uh, scales to any size organization, and also um, is easy to configure. You don't have to, hire an army of engineers, software engineers, or professional services, that sort of thing. You can if you want to, but you don't have to in order to get a lot of these things accomplished. Right? That was one of the main selling points of Cherwell. So if that's the sweet spot right in the middle of the spectrum, on the one side you have the scales up really big, but you need an army of engineers. On the other side, you have um, maybe there's some scalability there, but it's generally focused on customizing the things that the system does really well. So in the one category, I'm going to put like the enterprise sort of platforms, and in the other category, I'm going to put maybe some of the smaller companies. Um, doesn't mean they can't be used for larger companies, but they do what they do very well. They are designed to be an ITSM tool, um, and they are designed to customize in very specific ways. So they're not necessarily designed for extensibility the ways some of the other tools are. So in the big tool category, you have things like ServiceNow. That's the obvious, the elephant in the room, right? They're the big guys. You can customize pretty much whatever you want, but it's going to be a lot of code. They did recently add a no code editor for some things, but I haven't uh, done much with it, so I don't know how extensive that is. Um, I also, one of the big questions that I have on ServiceNow is I've never really, um, spent a lot of time in ServiceNow, so I don't know if you can do the same level of customization with, say, business objects that you could do with Avanti and Cherwell. So ServiceNow, obviously, in that category. Then you also have things like BMC, which I believe is still around. They've renamed from Remedy to Helix last I looked, um, and but they're kind of on that side. Um, as far as I know, again, I don't have much experience with them, so correct me if I'm wrong in the comments. Maybe they're not as extensible as I think they are, but if they are, then they definitely deserve to be in that category. But they're definitely aimed toward large enterprises, right? They've been in that space for a while. And then I'm going to put Jira Service Management in that category as well. Even though Jira kind of breaks the mold of that whole spectrum thing, right? Jira works really well if you're a small shop, if you just need to get service management as a concept up and running. Um, Jira is fantastic because it's already embedded into a lot of organizations, and the Jira service management component is basically just built on top of the foundation of the Jira bug tracking tool. Um, it's really just a very thin layer on top of that, which is why most people's biggest complaints about Jira Service Management is that the portal is awful. Leaves a lot to be desired. Um, but it does allow people to create incidents, add tickets, right? It comes with all the automation capabilities that Jira has always come with. Um, it's extensible. It has an API. You can write whatever code you want to talk to all the data, and that's totally fine. But I definitely would put it in that kind of that pro code. If you want to do something fancy with it, you're gonna need a developer in order to do something magical with it. But if you're okay with that, that is a contender, right? A lot of organizations are looking at Jira Service Management if they're already using Jira, I think it's technically called Jira Software or Jira Cloud, um, for bug tracking and software engineering, software development efforts, and or Confluence for documentation. Um, so if you're already using those systems, it's easy to bundle everything together. That's pretty cool. That works well. Um, if you're looking for an excuse not to use Jira, well, then we can talk about some of the other names on this list. Let's move to the other end of the spectrum, which, in all fairness, maybe it's not a spectrum. It's just kind of buckets that are related to each other in certain ways. But then we get some of the newcomers that are very hungry to pursue the Cherwell market, um, and have tackled some of the problems that Cherwell solved in very specific ways. So they've made specific admin functionality available as customizations, so that you don't have to write code, you don't have to build one steps, you don't have to do all the no code things. It's just a checkbox, which comes with upsides and downsides. Of course, the upside is that it's just a checkbox, just a checkbox. You find the setting and turn it on, and you're good to go. Or it's a drop down, and something simple, right? You don't have to build or think like an engineer. You just tell it what you want to do, and it does it. On the other hand, the downside is that it only has the customizations that it has, right? Cherwell was basically infinitely customizable. You didn't like the way something worked? Well, it was probably just an expression or a one step or something that you could go in and change. You could create a blueprint to totally change how the system worked if you wanted to. And these systems just don't have that functionality. So I would put right now, the systems that I've heard the most about are Easy Vista and um, Halo ITSM that I would put in that bucket. I've talked to a lot of people who have worked with those systems, and they seem to be doing well with the the former Cherwell market. Easy Vista in particular has a lot of folks who used to work at Cherwell or with Cherwell, so very knowledgeable with the ITSM market, of course, but also with the world of Cherwell and where you all are coming from. Um, so that that has its upsides as well. Um, Halo ITSM is rapidly innovating. They have. I'm a software engineer, so I'm going to call it release. A release. I don't think they call it a release every week or every 2 weeks. They have like an iteration or something like that, and then an official release every quarter or every few months or something along those lines. But bugs are getting fixed, feature requests are being addressed rapidly, and they're very hungry to get involved in this market, and very responsive. Everybody I've talked to who works with Halo really appreciates just how active the Halo community is or the company specifically is with all of their customers and supporting them and getting them up and running. So that's pretty cool. And then there are all the other ITSM platforms that I know very, very little about, but I'm just going to rattle them off because they're names that I've heard about. Um, okay, so actually, I'll just run down the list. Some of them I've already mentioned, but all the others are systems that I don't know a whole lot about. So ServiceNow, we've mentioned. BMC, we've mentioned. Jira, we've mentioned. Team Dynamics seems to be another one in the enterprise bucket, but I know absolutely nothing about it. It sounds like it's an older platform. I don't know. Correct me if I'm wrong. I mentioned Halo ITSM. There's one called Invgate, Invgate. I know absolutely nothing about that. Matrix 42, um, know nothing about that, but it's not the same thing as Code 42, um, which is a backup tool, I think, or Device 42, which is, I don't know what they do, but two separate companies. Companies like using 42 in their name, but this is specifically Matrix 42 is the ITSM tool. And then, of course, there's Avanti, Easy Vista, uh, Salesforce. Someone mentioned that they're using Salesforce for ITSM. I know I've seen um, ServiceNow integrated with Salesforce before, but I've never seen ServiceNow used directly as an ITSM tool. Freshworks, Zendesk, those two I've generally seen used for like small businesses, but apparently they do have a medium business and potentially small enterprise offering. They're not small companies, that's for sure, and perhaps they're doing more since I last used them. Symphony AI is one that I've heard recently. Spiceworks, SolarWinds Service Management. I didn't know SolarWinds had a service management product, but apparently they do. Then what I've heard recently is Atomic Work. Um, Again, I know very little about all of them. So those are all the ones that I've heard of. If you are looking at another one that I didn't mention, go ahead and leave a comment down below. If you're curious about how Cortex works with the particular tools that you're looking at, feel free to ask. Again, leave a comment down below. Um, in my opinion, the beauty of what I'm doing with Cortex is that it really doesn't matter which tool you're going to. You can still use Cortex because the data coming from Cherwell is always going to be the same. And it couldn't be easier than doing absolutely nothing with your data other than getting a copy from Avanti, right? Make sure you get a copy of your data from Avanti, and then that's all you need to do. You can run Cortex on that data. You don't need to do anything else with it. You don't need to convert it into a format where you can import it into the system that you're going to. You don't have to pick a system that works really well with the data that you've already exported from Cherwell because it's just the same data. You just run Cortex on it, and it literally couldn't be easier. Um, yeah, so I think that's it for the video. If you have comments, thoughts, leave a comment down below. If you're not subscribed to the channel, hit that subscribe button. Make sure to like the video if you found this list valuable. Feel free to respond down below to anything I've said here. If I'm totally off base with my experience with one of these tools, let me know. I Again, my experience with most of these tools is very minimal. Um, I've worked with them here and there, but my knowledge is very Cherwell oriented. Um, so I could be wrong. I've been wrong before. I'll be wrong again. I'm okay with that. Um, but yeah, and if you want to talk Cortex, again, there's the users group every Tuesday at 10 a.m. Pacific time, and there's contact information down in the description below if you want to talk about using Cortex on your database, and we can get that set up. There's ways to download Cortex. You can do a trial and try it out for yourself without having to talk to me at all. You just download it and configure a few things and see how it works. And even while you're doing that, you can always get help. If you run into an issue, everybody's setup is just a little bit different. So if you run into an issue, just reach out and we'll get you going. And yeah, I will see you in the next one. See you next week. See you in the users group. And we look forward to seeing where you go from Cherwell. Thanks for watching.